Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Hinter, and welcome back to the channel for the 11.8 Underworld Unleashed update notes for Smite 1. Let's jump right in. So we've got some new skins. We've got Bit Blaster Apollo in the Immortal Honor event, Fletched Fawn Artemis, also Immortal Honor, Charred Soul Chak in the new cross-gen pass, along with Hell Fury Mercury also in the new cross-gen pass. Moving on to balance though, first up for Conquest, they have the green buff decreased protection threshold for additional health and mana from 50 to 40. And yeah, this is most likely either a holdover from the Great Squishing, or actually, as they say here, it is most likely because support players are just being really squishy, especially in the early game. I'm not sure this will really help the early game stuff necessarily, but definitely should help a little bit. Blue buff, they have also increased the mana restore on God Hit from 2% to 3% of missing mana. I don't think Soul has particularly needed this. We're kind of fine on mana over there. You know, we got this effect, we got the mana regen on blue buff, we've got Totem as well, so like probably not going to make too much of a difference, but I guess if some characters are struggling with mana in solo, they might be a bit better now. Moving on to some Totem stuff. Gold Totem, they have decreased the flat pen from 5 up to 10 to 3 up to 7, so that's a pretty substantial nerf on the flat pen there. Obviously, this totem is really good in almost every situation. Even tanks kind of want this, especially our supports. Maybe not so much solo laners, because you're not going to get a lot of value when you're hitting a tank with this, but even supports that are running around, you know, aggressive supports like Bacchus and Ares and stuff like that. And then, of course, junglers, backliners, everyone could pretty much make use of this totem, so it's understandable to see it nerfed. The flat pen is obviously incredibly powerful since the changes in the 9.5 revert. Green totem, they have increased the max health and mana gain from 8 to 12 to 10 to 14. Honestly, I feel like this totem is fine, dude. I use this totem fairly often on my blue buff in the late game if I don't need the CDR on solo laners. You know, usually if I need the CDR, I'm taking the CDR, obviously. If you need the CDR, you should take the CDR most of the time, especially after this nerf to the flat pen on gold totem. But if I don't need the CDR, if I've already got it maxed out in my build, you know, if I've got like Shield of the Phoenix, Clad Shield and Pribwin or something in my Arthur or Tyr build, I'll just go for this because it's actually really nice to have that extra bit of health in the late game. And so yeah, kind of crazy to see this buffed. I'm not really going to complain as a tank player, but yeah, that's definitely nice. 14% max health is a big increase. And then Crimson Totem, they have increased the lifesteal and physical ability lifesteal up by 2.5% each rank there. Again, I don't really feel like Crimson Totem is particularly bad. I think it's very underrated in my opinion because it is ability lifesteal and you can actually make a lot of good use out of this in my opinion. I do think Crimson Totem goes a little bit underrated just because there are a few better ones. You know, often Crimson Totem is just like not quite good enough. You would often just rather have like the pen on a jungler, or you'd rather have the CDR on a mid laner or whatever. And so this thing often goes overlooked, but with Gold Totem getting nerfed and this thing getting buffed, you know, maybe we'll see it get picked up a little bit more often. I feel like 17.5% free physical ability lifesteal is very powerful, so we'll have to see if this gets picked up more, maybe on like synergy picks like Pele or Thanatos or whatever. But yeah, definitely an interesting rebalance of the totems. No nerf to CDR Totem, interestingly. I feel like if anything, that's the one that's picked up the most after Gold Totem. And it's also the most versatile. Basically every pick in the game can use it. You're probably not taking it on auto attack hunters, but other than that, every single other role can make use of the CDR one, but that one hasn't been nerfed here. I think the reason for that is probably that they like to keep CDR in even numbers, and currently I believe it's 10, 12.5, 15. If they nerfed it, they'd have to make it like 8, 10, 12 or something like that. It'd be a really weird amount, so maybe that's why they're hesitant on nerfing the CDR Totem. But this is definitely a nice rebalance. Gold Totem was definitely overperforming, and these two getting buffs makes sense, honestly. I think they were being underrated. I think they were pretty strong, and they were just being slightly overshadowed by stuff like Gold Totem and CDR Totem. And so, honestly, this will probably be a good change. I think we'll get a lot more variety in the totems that we're picking up now. Gold Fury, they have decreased the base health and increased the base gold, so specifically just making Gold Fury a little bit more valuable, especially in the early game, in terms of the base health has been reduced, the scaling health hasn't, so you could be able to take this a little bit easier in the early game and in the late game, obviously, but mostly in the early game with the base health change. And then the increased base gold reward as well, so just a little bit more priority on Gold Fury. Moving into items though, Hasten Fatalis, they have increased the cost by 100 gold. This isn't really going to do anything, I feel like. I mean, I guess it nerfs Freya a little bit because she kind of has to rush this item. It has been less crazy than I initially would have thought with Hasten Fatalis. It's not like every single ADC is building this all of the time. There are definitely people that are foregoing this item. I personally though, I just think it's really annoying to play against, and it's also caused major problems with Freya. I would rather just see them remove the 10 pen from this, and they could even bring the cost down then if they wanted to, so that the picks that really need this, like Freya and Kronos and a few others, they could still build that without it being a ridiculously expensive luxury item, but also they would just take the flat pen off of it so it's not so dominant early game, and then you actually have a trade-off for buying this item. Obviously the trade-off is it has no power on it, but it has pen on it, and that essentially equivalents to power in terms of increasing your damage output, so it's like it does have power on it really. So if they remove the flat pen, there will be a real trade-off there, or maybe at least reduce the flat pen down to like 5 or something. I don't know. I just really hate this item, honestly. I think it causes big problems in the game. It's cool to see it back. It's been fun, but I don't think think a 100 gold cost reduction is really going to do anything. We'll see if there's any specific Freya nerfs further down as well, because that's obviously the key abuser of this. Shifter Shield, they have increased the cost by 100. I think that's fair. They did do some nerfs to Shifter Shield in the bonus balance. They took down the power on the passive and the base health by 50, down from 300 to 250. And I think with this nerf as well, of the cost increase of 100, I think it might be in a fairly decent spot. I think it's still going to be a very strong item. It's just so, like, one size fits all. Like, every single tank build is going to be able to make use of Shifter Shield. Maybe you won't be picking up on junglers as often as you were, but honestly, I didn't see that many junglers picking up Shifter Shield anyway. Especially after the nerfs, it really has fallen into only tank builds, and so I think a 100 gold cost increase, this item's probably fine at where it is now. It's still a very efficient item. It still gives a lot of protections and a lot of health and some power as well. Like, you're still going to want this in a lot of your tank builds, but I think it's now probably reasonably fair. Hide of the Nemean Lion, they have decreased the reflect damage from 15 to 12.5. I think this is fair as well. Hide of the Nemean Lion, it's a little bit like Fatalis, but nowhere near as bad in that it causes, like, really annoying problems in the game. You know, as much as I like to shit on ADC mains, I can understand the pain of having to deal with this item as an ADC main. It completely shuts out everything that you're supposed to be doing. Like, the ADC is supposed to be killing tanks, and when you've got a tank running at you with a ton of defense, and this is just being reflected at you, it can be really annoying to play into. So yeah, understandable to see Hyde nerfed. Unfortunately, though, Hyde got a bigger nerf than Haste and Fatalis, which is kind of crazy to me. I feel like Fatalis, if Fatalis got the pen removed here, I'd be completely happy with this, but it's kind of crazy that Hyde gets a bigger nerf than Fatalis gets. Shield of the Phoenix, they have decreased the health by 50. I think this is fair. This item is really good, obviously. I mean, it's All Glad Shield. It's not anywhere near as good as All Glad Shield, obviously, because you don't get it online anywhere near as quickly. But yeah, this item is really strong. It's making certain picks really strong as well. You know, it's bringing Kukulkan and Arthur, like, really towards the top of the meta. And again, it's a relatively small nerf, so maybe we'll see some specific King Arthur changes further down as well. Honestly, with this nerf and a couple of Arthur changes, he might be okay. Hopefully, we'll see some specific Freya nerfs as well, and we're talking about his and Fatalis. Fortress Shield, they have also just bring down the health on this from 200 to 150, sort of to match what they did with Shifter Shield and Shield of the Phoenix in terms of reducing the health. RC, they have decreased the physical power from 40 to 35. This will have to be taken a look at by some ADC men smarter than me on whether this is now worse than Devos. Probably not, would be my guess. It is just so much faster, and while Devos does give more overall lifesteal, the fact that they both have pen on them now, and RC also gives attack speed and a very useful passive effect. I don't know, you'll have to have a look at the stats if you're an ADC man and see if this is going to be worth building instead of Devos anymore, or if you want to be switching back to Devos, whether a 5 power will make the difference or not, we'll have to see. Soul Eater and Evolution, this now only grants flat penetration on evolution of Soul Eater. This is an interesting change. Honestly, I don't see Soul Eater being a particularly problematic item in my opinion. But then again, its base stats are really good. When you compare this thing's base stats to, like, the base stats of Jotun's, it is just kind of insane how much this gives. Obviously, it gives 10 less CDR, but gives obviously that ability lifesteal as well, so it's interesting. I don't see this item as being particularly broken. What do they say about it? With the flat penetration becoming more valuable with the adjustments to TZK, Soul Eater has become very popular early purchase for solos, ability hunters. True, ability hunters. Okay, I was kind of forgetting about that, yeah. This is very popular on, like, Medusa and a lot of the other ability-based hunters that are kind of abusing it. I was gonna say, like, yeah, it's not really being rushed in solo all that much, honestly. It's like Wukong might buy this. That's pretty much it, honestly. Maybe some Assassin solos. But Assassin solos aren't exactly running the meta at the moment, so I wouldn't say it's really an issue in solo at all, and it's not an issue in jungle, in my opinion. I guess this is mainly to nerf ability-based hunters. Unfortunately, other roles taking strays because of hunters, once again. What can you do? Maybe they should have just looked at, you know, the specific ability hunters that are overperforming, like Medusa, and given them more nerfs or something. Because I don't particularly feel like Soul Eater was a really broken item. I guess it's just hunters kind of abusing it. Wing Shard, they have increased the duration of the buff from 3 seconds to 5 seconds. That is actually pretty massive. Obviously, Wing Shard competes with Golden Shard, and there are a few characters that might not want Golden Shard and might want Wing Shard specifically. You know, if they already have good clear and they have, like, really strong autos, like, obviously Freya would want Wing Shard over Golden Shard, but a lot of the time you're just going to prefer Golden Shard for the safe, reliable early game clear, and so Wing Shard kind of falls to the wayside. But giving it more duration, this is now 5 seconds. That is absolutely massive considering the amount of attack speed and movement speed this Shard gives, so maybe it's going to be a little bit of a trade-off now. You know, you're going to sacrifice your early game wave clear potential to gain this really powerful, like, 5 seconds is a long time, dude. You could really shred someone down with this. So you're getting more powerful boxing at the cost of your wave clear. I like this buff. I think it's smart. Devos is also getting a 100 gold cost reduction. Okay, so this is adding even more fuel to the pot of, like, Asi versus Devos, which one is better. This is now more likely that maybe Devos is going to come back into the meta since it's got 100 gold cost reduction. It's now substantially cheaper than Asi. But yeah, again, we'll have to see. I haven't looked at the numbers on this recently. ADC mens will probably figure this out relatively quickly. They're usually pretty efficient with their builds and stuff like that. So yeah, just check back maybe in a few days after this patch goes live whether Devos is still worth it. Or, sorry, whether Devos is now more worth it over Assy. Bladed Boomerang gets an increase to its buff duration of the crit that it gives from 6 seconds to 10 seconds. This is understandable. Rage has been particularly favored in crit builds at the moment over Bladed Boomerang. These two items kind of directly compete with each other in terms of like your big, massive crit chance bomb. They both provide like 50% crit chance. And so yeah, understandable to see the one that's underperforming a little bit get a small buff to try and compete with Rage. Winged Blade, they have increased the magical protection by 5, the health by 50, and the CCR by 10. That is some pretty massive buffs to Winged Blade. I do have to say though, I'm not opposed to it. Honestly, Winged Blade is almost never picked up, and I feel like it's a really good counter item that people either don't know exists or just really it is not worth it to build it, even into like strong slows. And I'm absolutely fine with a specific niche counter item like this getting buffed up. Obviously, you'll have to look at certain things, you know, is it going to be too powerful into certain picks or whatever, but I do like the idea of these niche counter items getting a little bit more viability, and this is a pretty massive base stat bump on this item, especially considering how cheap it is. Dawnbringer, they have decreased the cost by 50, increased the health by 50, and increased the passive duration from 6 seconds to 8 seconds. So Dawnbringer is one of those items where, like, in theory, this item should be so good, but it just doesn't really serve the purpose that you need it to serve. Like, it's a power and health hammer item. You would think you would want to kind of rush that in the early game, but then the passive is, like, based on a percentage of your prots, and it's like, you don't really want that until late game, and then by the time you get to late game, the power doesn't matter on the item because you want the power for early clear. It's just a bit of a weird item. They have been buffing it a lot though, and this is also some pretty substantial buffs to the item. We'll have to see. It's just whether it becomes like too stat efficient to where it's just a great rush in solo even though you're not getting a lot of value from the passive, or whether the passive becomes so good in the late game that you still want this in your build even as a late game pickup. At some point it will probably start filling that role if they buff it more. Maybe this is that point. I don't really know, honestly. Heartward Amulet, they have decreased the cost by 50, increased the health by 50, and added 200 base mana to the item. I think this is fine. Heartward is often not picked up all that much. Just generally because magical defense is less valuable than physical defense, and so when this thing is about even started with sovereignty, you would just almost always rather get sovereignty unless you're playing into, you know, specifically like Freya ADC with a mage mid or whatever, then you might want Heartward. This does also buff the item massively for solo laners though, that like to use the green glyph on this item that converts a percentage of your physical prots into magical prots. I do think this item is already in a pretty decent spot in regards to that, so, and there's also a lot of really good physical defense items for solo laners right now. You got like Shield of the Phoenix, you got Void Shield, Shift Shield is mixed, but definitely really good for that too. And so maybe these sort of triple physical defense and Heartward glyph builds will come back, because this is a pretty substantial buff to this item. The mana is whatever, it probably won't matter all that much, but 50 extra health, 50 gold cost reduction, it's nothing to scoff at. And so yeah, it might get picked up a little bit more in support builds, especially if you're facing like a Freya in addition to a mage, or like an Alquang in addition to a mage mid. And also, even with the glyph, this item is now 2650 gold. That's not omega expensive, you know, there are items that are more expensive than that without a glyph for solo laners, so this thing could potentially come back into the solo lane meta a little bit with how strong physical defense is at the moment. The triple physical defense in the Heartward glyph builds could become really good again. Spear of the Magus, they have decreased the cost by 50 and it decreased the internal cooldown on the item from 15 to 8 seconds, so a pretty massive buff on the passive there. Obviously, Spear of the Magus is almost never picked up. Honestly, what I'd like to see with Spear of the Magus is just return it back to its like stupid 65 flat pen and let Anubis have his fun. Honestly, I would enjoy that personally, but if they do want to keep the item in its current state, then this is pretty nice buffs for it. It's just a very specific item, and oftentimes a lot of the picks that do use this item really well, like Anubis, you know, a lot of these take damage gods, they're just not really that strong in general, so you don't really see the item get picked up. But I don't know, maybe they've looked at if basically the benchmark is if this item isn't being bought on Anubis, then it's not good enough, because Anubis is clearly the best user of this item. So yeah, we'll have to see where it's at now. That's a pretty big reduction to the internal cooldown. Curse Weaver, they have buffed Curse Weaver. That is crazy to me. They have increased the max health and mana damage from 5% to 7.5%. If you're a watcher of my second channel, I just put out a video today about Cthulhu, like 5500 HP build, and it had Curse Weaver in it. It was absolutely farming people. I think this item's great, honestly. I don't know why people don't build it. I guess it's because it's really specific. Generally, you're only going to want this on Guardian solos. There aren't really a lot of mage mids that are going to be able to make good use of Curse Weaver, particularly. Like maybe Zhong, maybe a couple of like slightly more bruiser-oriented mage mids, but oftentimes you're not even playing them in mid, you just play them in solo instead. And so really it's for like those mage solos, you know, maybe your Zhongs, your Barons, your Hades, and then like your Guardian solos, like your RTOs and your Cthulhus and stuff like that really use this item. And they're just not that popular at the moment, that's the thing. Zhong and Cthulhu are pretty good, but other than that, I guess RTO's decent too. But there just aren't a lot of good users of this item, and I feel like maybe that's dragging its like data down a little bit, and that's why they're buffing it. But honestly, I think this item's really good, and I think it's going to be insane with this buff. That is a 50% increase to the damage output and healing output of this item. That is fucking crazy, dude, considering how good this item already is, in my opinion. definitely Curse Weaver build's gonna be really good on your Guardian Solos now. Run into Hootie, they are giving it 10 more power. That's fine. Mage mids are doing okay, but not amazing, so they're just giving their items a little bit more power. That's fine. Charon's Coin, they have increased the gold per flip from 1 to 15. I like this. It's still not gonna be an economy, like, crazy item or anything. It's just gonna give you, I mean, how many flips are there? 8, I believe. So it's just gonna give you, you know, like a little bit of a, you can essentially just reduce the cost of this item. You know, 8 times 15 is what, 120. So you can just reduce the cost of this item by 120 over the long run. It's interesting. I like this. I think it's funny. That's pretty cool. Stone of Gaia now grants power when the passive is not on cooldown, but remove the power while the passive regeneration is in effect. This is a big change. So of course, this item still has its problems. It has no protections on it, but you're now going to be sort of in the realm of like almost a hammer in terms of if you want to rush this item, because you're going to be getting a lot of value. You know, I guess there's a question of like, does this item just become stat efficient enough? How much power does this item give? Let's look that up. Okay, it's only 15 physical and 25 magical power. It's not actually that much. If this number was higher, I was thinking there might actually be some potential for this item to sort of fill a role where you build it specifically into matchups that don't have knockups, so you can permanently get the power and just use it as a base stats and regen item. Maybe that could be the case, but the power on it's not actually that high. It's not really comparable to like hammers or anything, but still, this is an interesting change. You know, this item's no longer just health and regen, it's health, power, and regen, and health and power can be particularly good, as we've seen with stuff like Blackthorn Hammer. I don't think it's going to be competing with Blackthorn Hammer because the power is just a little too low, I feel like, especially because you would mainly build it in that situation as like a rush for solo laners, and the 15 physical power just probably isn't enough to make it competitive in that regard. But this is definitely an interesting change. Definitely makes Gaia better. Equinox, they have increased the passive damage per level from 2 to 3. Everyone knows this item was pretty trash garbage after they nerfed it so much. So yeah, they've just reverted one of the previous nerfs to the item. Abyssal Stone, they have removed the passive cooldown. I don't know how long this was. So this can only occur once every 5 seconds, so they just completely removed that. It did debuff them for 5 seconds and can only occur once every 5 seconds, so it's not going to actually matter in terms of just like keeping this effect of 20% negative CDR on someone permanently. But what this will do is it means, you know, if you hit one person with Abyssal Stone, you don't have to wait 5 seconds to hit another person with Abyssal Stone. You can just apply it to loads of different people all at once. So I think this is interesting. Again, I hate talking about this item. I hate predicting that it's going to be good. But honestly, is it going to be good? Fuck knows. I give up predicting if this item's going to be good or not. It's so hard to tell how much value this item is giving you. Like, I almost wish somehow in like the post-game screen they could show you like, you know, how much of an increased cooldown you're giving people. But then again, it's not always relevant. If you just hit someone and they back off and they haven't cast any abilities, it's actually not relevant. It's so difficult to decide if this item's going to be good, dude. It's so hard to know if it's like actually doing a lot for you. I have no idea, dude. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. Erosion, they have decreased the passive cooldown from 10 seconds to 4 seconds on this one. And they say here it's possible for the effect to have a 100% uptime now on Erosion, so you can basically permanently be reducing enemy shields, so potentially good there. It's just such a niche item, you know, you're not really wanting this particularly. Like, a lot of the picks that you do want anti-shielding on, you would prefer an effect like Sunder and Ankh that just straight up take shield away rather than reducing when it is applied. But, you know, maybe this will make it really good into stuff like Nike and Yamoja, any of those other big shield characters, Odin, stuff like that. Maybe it'll be good. Archmage's Gem, they have increased the magical power from 85 to 120. Jesus. Okay, I mean, that's honestly the kind of buff I like to see, dude. Archmage's Gem has been absolutely hot garbage for so long, and it's just never really competed with Pendulum. Maybe it will now. That is an absolutely massive power increase. How much is that? Like 35 extra magical power on this thing? That's definitely interesting, dude. That's now like competing with Rod Tahuti in terms of the amount of power it offers, and is probably now offering more total power than Pendulum, even when Pendulum is like fully in its element in terms of the amount of mana you have left. So yeah, this is interesting. Maybe Archmage's Gem will be a little bit more competitive now. That is an absolutely massive magical power bump. Rejuvenating Heart, they have increased magical power by 10 and increased the passive range by 15. I don't know, this item just feels kind of weird. It's a really funny item. I do like building this sometimes on like funny Anubis builds and stuff. But it's just a little bit of a weird one. Maybe with this slight bump up, people will try it out again, see if it's good. Crimson Claws, they have decreased the cost by 100, decreased the power by 5, but increased the lifesteal from 15 to 25%. So it's going to be much more competitive with stuff like Asi and Devos now. It's going to be interesting, dude. Maybe it's going to be some sort of like three-way competition for which lifesteal item is now the best for your Russian ADCs. Maybe Crimson Claws is in the equation now as well. Because this is definitely a trade in its favor. You know, losing 5 power for 10% lifesteal is already really worse. And then they also gave it 100 gold cost reduction as well to be sort of probably more in line where Asi is at now. I can't remember what the price of Asi is. Yeah, I don't know. Again, this is probably for ADCs to decide on whether this is going to be good or not versus Devos and versus Asi. Pythagorean's Feast, they have decreased the cost by 100 and increased the lifesteal from 9% to 12%. Yeah, this is pretty much just reverting a lot of the nerfs that it got in the mage solo meta. Like, Pyth Piece, it is a really efficient item, but honestly, it took a lot of undue nerfs, mainly because of how strong mage solos were, and this was one of the items they were building. It was their rush. And so it kind of took a lot of nerfs for that reason. Will this bring back mage solos? I don't think so. A lot's changed in the game since then. Bancroft's Claw, they have decreased the cooldown from 15 to 10 seconds, and they have increased the max health damage and shield from 0.5 to 1. So this originally was 1, I believe, and then they nerfed it down to 0.5 when it was particularly strong and like Hades was completely dominating. So pretty much just bringing it sort of back in line with around where it was nearer to release, because this item did take a lot of nerfs. Amulet of Silence, they have increased the passive range from 40 to 55, and they have also decreased the cooldown on the silence effect from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. Perfected Rod, they have increased the buff duration from 3 seconds to 6 seconds on this one as well. And Reverent Pribwin, they have increased the shield health from 200% to 225% of your protections. In my opinion, this is already the better Pribwin glyph. I feel like Red should have got better, if anything. I know a lot of people do build Red Pribwin, but I honestly love building Blue, dude. It gives you so much shield, it's insane. But I guess it depends on your pick. You know, certain picks do definitely do better with Explosive Pribwin if they can sort of like confirm the damage off of their ult and stuff like that. Breastplate of Vigilance, they have increased the passive range from 60 to 70 units on the, I assume that is the attack speed reduction effect. Or the basic attack damage. Is it attack speed or basic attack damage? It's one of the two. Some kind of anti-auto attack effect. And then Malicious Deathbringer, the passive cooldown reduction now also affects ultimate abilities. Okay, that's a crazy change. Most of these glyph ones are like whatever, but that's a pretty crazy change right there. It's a hard one to use. You have to be a crit user that also gets a decent value from their abilities and stuff like that. But you know, maybe this is just good now because it's going to be significantly reducing your ultimate's cooldown pretty substantially. So maybe this is good now, dude. That's actually a really big change. E-Shell, they have decreased the damage on Threads of Light by like about 10 at all ranks, and then they've also decreased the bonus damage by 5%, and they have removed the damage mitigation from Grade 10. This is good. E-Shell's been particularly strong for a long time, and this ultimate went underrated for so long that it got a ton of different buffs, and it just became really annoying to deal with now, especially because it's completely unmissable and also heals her now. So yeah, removing the damage mitigation I think makes sense, considering she already has Omni Movement and CC immunity for this. Zhong Kui, they have reduced the protections per stack on his demon back from 1.6 to 1.3. Zhong has been particularly strong over the last like couple of patches, so understandable to see him nerfed down a little bit. King Arthur, they have removed the HP 5 straight up from his passive. Okay, that's a change. They have increased the cooldown on his 1 from 14 all ranks to 16 scaling down to 14. So this is the ability level first. It won't make overall a massive amount of impact, but it definitely will affect things. You know, if you use this on your blue buff as you're heading into lane, it's gonna be 2 seconds until you've got it back up to clear the wave as you come in. It might reduce his level 1 pressure and stuff like that. And then Hamstring, Overhead Slash. Okay, yeah, it's the same change. They've just done it to both forms. So I like these two changes. I think these are sensible. Removing the HP 5 is a bit sad because I'm pretty sure they only added that like fairly recently to his passive, and I think it was really cool. Obviously, he doesn't necessarily need the HP 5 anymore because that was mainly a replacement for old Glad Shield in terms of giving him health sustain. But honestly, I don't like that they removed such a cool feature that they added to him fairly recently. I'd like to see some other nerfs to different areas of his kit, maybe like these kind of nerfs rather than just straight up removing the HP 5. But I guess he has Shield of the Phoenix back. It's not really going to make that much of a difference to remove this HP 5. He's kind of got that sustained back. Mulan is getting nerfed. They have increased the requirements on all of her trading things for the 3rd rank specifically, and then they have increased the cooldown of Spear Thrust from 13 to 14. Mulan honestly was falling off quite a lot. Mulan is still good, but not like so overbearing anymore, especially with the Blackthorn nerf. And so honestly, I don't even know if this stuff was necessary. Maybe she'll be like pretty bad right now, but yeah, she was pretty dominant for a long time. I think they're a little bit late on these nerfs, honestly. I feel like she has been falling out of the meta quite a bit in favor of stuff like Cthulhu and King Arthur and Cucullin and stuff like that. She's not really like the best abuser of Shield of the Phoenix. But yeah, we'll see where she's at after these nerfs. Probably not great anymore, I wouldn't say. Medusa, they have decreased the damage scaling per tick on Viper Shot by 2% each, increased the cooldown of Acid Spray, similar to the Arthur change, so in the early game it's going to be a little bit longer. And then Petrified, they have decreased the bonus damage a little bit there as well. So yeah, they were Medusa nerfs. I don't know if Soul Eater necessarily needed to get nerfed. Medusa was the main ability-based ADC abusing this. There were some others as well, but honestly, Medusa was the main one. But yeah, Medusa going to be definitely significantly nerfed, given the fact that they've tuned down Soul Eater and also given her specific nerfs here. And now Freya, they have decreased the base damage on her 1 by 5 all ranks and 5% scaling. They have increased the cooldown on Pulse by 1 second, and they've increased the cooldown of her ult by 10 seconds. I don't think this is going to be enough, dude. I don't think this is going to be enough. Fatalis being back is just too strong for her. It's too overbearing. I think in conjunction with like a pen removal or pen nerf on Haste and Fatalis, maybe we could see where she's at after this, but I don't think this is going to be enough. Chang'e, they have decreased the base damage and scaling of her 1 by a little bit, and Waxing Moon, they have decreased the base damage and scaling of that by a little bit as well. Chang'e did get some nerfs in the bonus balance, I believe, or was it last patch or something? She has received some nerfs after becoming, like, super strong. And also, I believe Murden got some nerfs as well over the course of that, so maybe she'll be in a decent spot after these. She'll probably still be quite strong, though. Her burst is just ridiculous. Moving on, though, we got Jingwei. They have increased her attack speed per level, decreased the cooldown of explosive bolts, so it's going to be 10 seconds in the late game. That is kind of crazy. Maybe she could even build a bit of malicious Deathbringer action and just get it sub constantly. Agility, they have decreased the cooldown to 16 seconds at all ranks instead of 18 scaling down to 16. They have increased the power that it gives her as well, and also increased the power buff duration, and they have increased the damage scaling on airstrike. Man, that's a lot of buffs for Jingwei. That's a lot of buffs for Jingwei. We'll see how she feels after this. Probably gonna be really strong in my opinion. Kumba, they have increased his base physical protection. Kumba Kana's first 2 basic attacks now cleave. That is an interesting change. Maybe he's gonna be a little bit more viable as a solo laner now. We'll have to see. You know, having those cleaves for a little bit of extra clear speed is gonna be really nice. His clear is still gonna be absolute ass garbage. Kind of always has been, but we'll see where he's at after this. They have increased the revival health from 35 to 40, and also when this passive ability is on cooldown, Kumba Kana gains 20 HP 5. That's pretty nice. His 1, oh my god, so many buffs, dude. Are they basically changing the entirety of Kumba Kana here? His 1, they have decreased the mana cost and cooldown. His 2's root is no longer affected by DR, and they have decreased the duration of the root a little bit as well to compensate for that. That's a big change. Mighty Yawn now deals damage when the Mesmerize is broken early. They have shifted the duration to be longer in the early game, but shorter in the late game. They've also decreased the slow a little bit to compensate for this added damage, and decreased the attack speed slow as well, but they've also decreased the mana cost, and then Epic Uppercut goes down to 70 seconds. Man, Kuma's gonna be like a new god after these changes, dude. That's crazy. Honestly, I have no idea where he's gonna be at after this. He's bad at the moment, but will these buffs be enough? This one is really substantial. This one is also pretty big as well. Maybe we have to try Kumba in solo, dude. I hate Kumba, I hate playing him, but maybe we'll have to try him in solo on the second channel. Maui, they have increased his base attack speed, basic attack power, and basic attack power per level. They have decreased the charge time of his 1 by roughly 50%, and increased the projectile speed by roughly 10%. Increased the protections and movement speed on his 2, and decreased the cooldown of Solar Swing. This is kind of crazy for Maui, dude, because I feel like Maui's pretty decent right now. He's just very hard to play. Yeah, I feel like Maui's going to be super good now, dude. This change specifically as well is going to be really important. Baki Kujira, they have decreased the cooldown of his 1, is this? I don't play this character, dude. Who plays this character? They have decreased the cooldown of what I believe is his 1, so it now scales down from 14 to 12 instead of 14 at all ranks. They have increased the damage of his 2 a little bit in the late game, and then increased the stun duration on his 3 to 1.5 at all ranks from 0.5. Okay, that's a bit of a scary change. I really don't want Baki Kujira to be back, man. This is a really big change here. Anubis gets some buffs. They have increased his base health and health per level. They have increased the duration on his passive from 5 to 6, decrease the cooldown of Plague of Locust by a second, and increase the damage scaling a little bit, and increase the Mummified stun duration, so it's now 2 seconds flat. So definitely some nice buffs for Anubis there. We don't need to talk about Anubis too much, he'll still be bad, but maybe the people that do enjoy him can have a little bit more fun. Hell, they have increased the mana per level a little bit. They have decreased the mana cost of her 2, the mana cost of her 2 in Light Stance as well, and then increased the damage scaling of Repulse by 10%, and increased the movement speed on her 3 in Light Stance as well. So some pretty nice Hell buffs there. We'll see if she comes back into the meta a little bit. Huyi, they have increased attack speed per level, decreased the cooldown on Ricochet, so it now goes down to 8 seconds in the late game, dude. That's kind of nutty. And then they've also decreased the mana cost of his 3, just to bring it a bit more in line with other abilities. Hunbats, they have increased his basic attack damage boost on his passive from 15 to 20%. They have increased the bounce range on Monkey from 40 to 55. That's pretty substantial. And they have also increased the deploy range of Fear No Evil by a little bit as well. Tia's ult now goes back to scaling down to 70. I believe this was how it was for a while, and then he got nerfed when he was really strong. I don't even know when. Maybe 10.6 or something like that. This originally was like this, and then it got nerfed to 90 seconds flat. It's now going to go back down to 70, and it's still got the buff, of course, of being able to stun and deal increased damage and stuff like that. So it's going to be really nice. Tia uses a lot of the items pretty well right now. He's a pretty good Shield of the Phoenix user. He's a great Pribwin user. He's obviously like Shifter Shield. So yeah, maybe we'll see a little bit of Tia back in the meta. Pele buffs. They have increased the physical power gain from her passive from 1.5 to 2 per level. Increased the duration of the passive from 4 to 6 seconds. That's massive, and decrease the cooldown on it from 30 to 20. That is also massive. So it's 50% longer and also like a 50 or like 33% lower cooldown on it as well. And then Eruption, they have increased the inner damage and outer damage slightly as well. So yeah, some pretty big Pele buffs. Maybe we'll see Pele back, because it was not that long ago that Pele was really strong, dude, and she was like dominating mid lane, even being played in solo and obviously being a good jungler as well. So Pele's probably back with these changes. Bakasura, they have increased his passive physical power on Butcher Blades a little bit, and they have also Regurgitate now deals tick damage to enemies inside the area, and they have also increased the Cone basic attack duration, so it now lasts up to 10 seconds. Okay, dude, that's kind of crazy Baka buffs as well, dude. Maybe Baka's gonna be really strong now. Ula's getting buffs. That's kind of crazy to me, dude. I feel like Ula's really good right now. They have increased the damage on his 1 in arrows, decreased the mana cost of his 3 in arrows, and then also increased the damage scaling of his 3 in axes, and decreased the mana cost of it as well. So nothing too crazy, honestly. They're not really buffing him overall that much, but yeah, I really don't feel like Ula needs buffs. For mana, they're buffing as well. Oh god. They have decreased the cooldown of his dash by 2, increased the projectile speed of his 3, and the projectile width has been increased to better match the art, so a little bit wider on that. And they have increased the shield scaling from 0.75 to 0.9% of max health. Okay, so nothing too crazy for the mana. That's good to see. No monster mana being back in dominating the meta. Discordia, they have increased the projectile speed by roughly 10% on her 1, and then they have also increased the range of her jump a little bit, and now also reduces the cooldown of her ultimate by 0.5 seconds per tick. Wow, that is kind of crazy. It's a little bit similar to the Malice change. Yeah, that's gonna be pretty nutty, dude. Hades buffs, they have decreased the cooldown of Shroud of Darkness by 1 second at all ranks. They have increased the damage of Devour Souls pretty substantially, especially into the later ranks, and you rank this very quickly, and also 15% more power scaling on it. And then they've also decreased the detonation damage. Right, so, okay, I was gonna say, this is a pretty substantial buff, but they've decreased the detonation damage a little bit, so it's just kind of evening it out a little bit. It's gonna be more on the base, but a little bit less on the exploding targets. And then they've increased the damage scaling per tick from 30 to 35. So maybe Hades is back, dude. He also got a buff recently to his ultimate cooldown. It scales down in the late game now, and it's kind of, I think it's like 70 seconds or something stupid. So maybe Hades is going to be back, dude. We'll have to try him out. Kali, they have increased the penetration per level from 0.25 to 0.5. This was nerfed a while back, pretty much just reverting that. And they have increased the physical power on D3. I believe this is also at least a partial revert of a change that they made a while back. And then they have increased the damage scaling per tick on the roll from 8 to 10%. Probably won't matter all that much. Artemis, they have increased base health and health per level, and enemies taking damage from the traps are now revealed to Artemis' team for the duration, so kind of bringing back a little bit of that old feeling of Artemis where her traps acted as wards. They're not going to act as walls, but they will act as vision if an enemy steps in it. And then they have also decreased the cooldown of Transgressor's Fate to 14 at all ranks. Sorry, Vengeful Assault, not Transgressor's Fate. But yeah, there you go. A pretty big patch in terms of balance. Nothing too crazy and new, obviously. There's no, like, returning items or, like, 9.5 reverts or anything crazy like that. Probably because they're working towards the release of Smite 2's 24/7 alpha. But a pretty big balance patch overall. This should definitely help. There's still some things that are going to need more. Freya's definitely going to need more. Maybe Fatalis should have the pen nerfed on it a little bit, down to, like, 5 flat pen or something like that. But this is overall good, dude. I'm happy with this patch. This is definitely going to shake up the meta an absolute ton. There's some major buffs, especially stuff like Kumba's buffs, and some pretty decent nerfs overall to a lot of the top performers. I do think Freya will need more, but other than that, honestly, this is a pretty good patch. Yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed my review of this. Let me know what you think about this patch down below, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.